Facebook insider this week blew the whistle on her former employer, telling members of Congress that the social media giant is tearing our society apart. She says basically that more censorship and government intervention in the form of increased regulations is the remedy. Boy, did Facebook, Apple, Amazon, and Google not like that approach at all. Here to weigh in on the problem of big tech and what the states can do to band together to actually save our society, the former interim CEO for Parler. Would you welcome to the show, Mark Meckler. Mark, great to have you. 60 Minutes did a big thing with Frances Haugen from the Facebook so-called whistleblower. It kind of fell apart in the course of the week. It may be that what her solutions are worse than some of the government solutions.
Yeah, I think what she's looking for, what she's proposing, is big government regulation of big tech. I think the big tell, there were two big tells in her testimony. One was the fact that she was complaining about things that everybody already knew. There was no actual news broken. And we've heard over the week that she is definitely a dyed-in-the-wool leftist activist. But we also heard her say she tied all of it to the January 6th events. And somehow this turned from Facebook generally into aiming at conservatives. And this is where you see Zuckerberg come into play. He issued a release saying, you know, she doesn't know anything. She has no idea what she's talking about. But yes, please, Congress, regulate us. And for all of us who are conservatives, that should be a tell. What they're saying is they want the Democratic Party and big tech absolutely wed so that they can control what you and I can say on tech.
You know, the typical line that Facebook and Apple and other companies use is that, hey, we're a competitive society. If you don't like Facebook, come up with an alternative. You did that. Parler was exactly that. Hundreds of thousands of people were going to Parler, and then the big guys decided, we don't want competition after all. Yeah. What did they do to you?
Yeah, and to be fair, I wasn't involved with starting it up, and that was started by some great patriots, and I came in after it got wiped offline to help them get back online. And so basically what they did, and sort of the part of the story that most people don't know, is they didn't only shut down the servers, they shut down what's called domain name registration. You know, you've registered your website at GoDaddy. Yeah. That went away. The ability to process financial transactions went away. Virus protection went away. All these merchants shut everything down. So essentially, Parler was erased from existence in a matter of moments.
I mean, people, I don't think, appreciate what that means. It means, for all practical purposes, to whisper into Merrick Garland's ear, that is domestic terrorism. When you shut people down and you don't allow them even the opportunity to speak and be heard, and you take away their platform. That's what's happening in America.
Yeah, and that was the #1 downloaded app the week before they took it down. 21 million Americans were using that app as an alternative to Facebook and Twitter and places like that. So people like you and I felt comfortable we could speak there. We weren't going to be censored. It was a First Amendment platform, and they took that away. And the reason they took it away is because they don't believe in the First Amendment.
So, Mark, what can happen? What can be done? What should be done that would get back to the place where we have genuine, constitutional, free speech?
Yeah, I think the main thing, there's a couple of reforms that need to be done. People have heard you probably talk about Section 230, the Communications Decency Act. We need to tighten that up because these political actors in big tech are using that to censor political speech.
Explain what 230 is. A lot of people say, what does that
Section
mean?
230 was intended to allow these big tech providers to censor obscenity, something we all want. We don't want pornography on Facebook or Twitter or things like that. And it gave them liability protection for doing so. And what they're using it for instead is to censor anything that they find objectionable. There are words in there that say other objectionable content. And they're using that to censor conservative speech. So that needs to be removed, clarified, or they should lose their liability protection. That's one thing. And then I would encourage people, continue to use alternative platforms.
You are engaged in something called the Convention of the States. It has a pretty significant goal. I think it's a great idea because it may be the only way we ever see reforms in this country. Explain to our audience what Convention of the States is, what it would do, and what reforms could happen, because Congress, I'm convinced, is never going to do it.
Never. Well, first of all, you were the first endorser of Convention of States project, so thank you for being way ahead of the curve. What it is using Article 5 of the Constitution to propose amendments to restrain federal tyranny. And the way it works is the states can call a convention when 2/3 of the states agree on what the subject matter is of the convention. They can gather, they can propose those amendments, they have to be ratified by 38 states or 3/4 of the states. And the three subject matter areas, one, imposing term limits on D.C. And by the way, not just the politicians, but also the bureaucrats, the staffers, and the judiciary.
Do you think that's a good idea? Yeah. I love that.
So second is anything that would impose fiscal restraints on the federal government. We're just watching them bust the budget right now,
Right.
3 trillion, 5 trillion, who knows how many trillion, right? So we can impose a balanced budget amendment on them, generally accepted accounting principles. We could limit taxes, limit spending. Again, about 85% of the American public are in favor of it. Congress will never do that stuff.
They will never do it, but that's why it's so important that people are aware of it. I know there's some pushback. People say, oh, it could get out of control. Congress is out of control, Mark.
Every day.
I mean, we got to recognize. And it is not an easy process to change the Constitution with the Convention of the States. So when people get worried about it, I think they ought to be worried about not doing it. I hope to have you back so we can continue to talk about the progress. I want people to know how to become informed and, more importantly, involved in it. So, Mark, thank you for being here. I want you to learn more about Mark Meckler and the Convention of the States Action Project. Here's how you do it. Point your browser to conventionofstates.com. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, be sure to leave a like, then subscribe, and hit the notification bell below. Now, if you didn't like it, you ought to find a Ben Shapiro video to detox you with more facts.